Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my overview of Death Stranding. So I'm just going to front load a little bit of information because we're changing the format going into the new year, and this is the sort of first cab off the rank. I'll come up with a spiel. I don't want to get bogged down, but this is, for people that have been around for a while. Hello, if you're new. Previously, when I do overviews, I'd only spend like 2 hours with the game. In this case, I've spent 18 hours with this at the time of this recording. I'm going to play more of it, but 18 hours, according to How Long to Beat, is the average to clock a game. So if I'm not through it, I'm just going to put up a video and call it an overview. And when I do get through it, I'll do a follow-up and call it a review. Also, the hope is under this format to do 100 games a year. Bit of a task, I know, and I want to rank them basically from 100 down to 1. Subjective ranking, it's a recommendation. You can fight with me if you really want, but know that when I put 100% on the thumbnail, that doesn't necessarily mean this is the best game of the last 12 months. Well, we'll see, won't we? Because I'll dynamically change it as we add more games in. So know that it's about as 100% as it is 1 out of 1. Now, saying all that, this game is excellent and I love it. And it's almost a bit mean picking this as the first one going into the new year, but I digress. I was fed up. I wanted to play something I knew that I would love. I played a chunk of it when it first released back in the day, and I've been meaning to get back to it. So I started a fresh save and went into it, and yeah, this game is excellent. And I feel like there's going to be a bunch of people that already know that. There's probably going to be a bunch of people that are just enamored with Kojima and worship him, and honestly, good for you, fine. I'm not really, I'm not for or against the dude. Actually, honestly, I kind of rate that he's an auteur psychopath that does whatever he wants, and it's fascinating to me watching Western developers try and imitate the wrong parts of him, i.e. they want to be a celebrity developer, and it's ego-driven, whereas this guy I truly don't think really cares about it. He's just a psychopath that puts pen to paper and weird stuff comes out the other end. The point of saying that is Death Stranding I really love, but the Metal Gear games, I don't know, I haven't played a lot of them and I'm not as enamored. So the reason for saying that is maybe you don't like Metal Gear or it never really stuck for you and you're standoffish about this. Well, I guess I'm kind of the same. Death Stranding is excellent and you should try it out. If you've poo-pooed it because you've heard people say, well, it's a walking simulator and all you do is this, the degrading, disparaging comments from the peanut gallery of people that have found this niche where it's popular just to negatively comment on games but never actually play them at all. Ignore these voices. This game, I think, is kind of a must-play. It is so original and unique in a time where from that AAA space, let's say, the high budget projects, they are so beholden to their blue chip systems that they are part of, that change and innovation is honestly too risky. This is kind of what a lot of people are begging for, something original and unusual but with fuck you money behind it. Since I mentioned the walking sim component, I will stick on that for a moment. Walking sim, if you're not across it, is a term of disparagement, which is to say, if I'm calling your game a walking sim, it's because your game's shit and it has no gameplay loop, and it is an insult saying that all you do is walk forward. Hilariously, there's some developers that have embraced that term, and it's like, yeah, our game is shit. It is unironically a walking sim with a crappy story and a crappy delivery system, but I digress. 99% of the time, it's an insult term to a game with no gameplay. However, there would be an exception to exist where you would take a game and you'd literally simulate walking, as it were. And that would be a different story altogether, and that's what's going on here. All of the terrain and the way that your dude interacts with it is kind of mapped out, where his little foot goes and what bit he steps on. You've got this shoulder scanner that you can scan the environment with, and it will give you an idea of the terrain and how rocky and that it is. You carry packages. A big part of it is that you're this delivery man, the man that delivers, and you kind of Tetris them on your backpack to even out the carry weight. As stuff becomes more sort of unwieldy, heavy, unbalanced, you use triggers if you're using controller, like left and right trigger, I'm using my hands, to use his hands to pull on the shoulder straps to steady yourself out so you don't fall over, to regain your balance. So there's all these mechanics around actually sort of mountain climbing and carrying heavy loads over undulating terrain. It's very clever. The elevator pitch to most would have been probably terrible. all right, take this. We're going to actually carry FedEx packages across the landscape and interact with the ground. Like, most people aren't going to bite on that, but I'm telling you, whatever had to happen to make this exist, I'm glad it did, because they absolutely stuck the landing. So yeah, I suppose you could just derivatively say that's the gameplay loop. You're walking from point A to point B, you're holding onto your shoulder straps, you're carrying backpack stuff, but there's so much more to it. From the more sort of grounded, let's say, survival-like mechanics, for example, you have boot wear, so you have to change your boots out or you'll start bloody bleeding out of the feet. You've got boot clips on your backpack so you can carry spares as well. You've got the different terrain that you need to overcome. So, you know, what if you come up to a mountainside or whatever? Not everything's flat. Well, you can carry like little ladder kits on your backpack and set them against the rock wall. Also, climbing ropes for coming down the other side, which kind of makes it even easier to climb back up on the return trip. And as it goes on, I don't necessarily want to spoil it, but like infrastructure starts to really blow out. You can start building giant bridges, and there are these like auto paver things where you can start building out freeway sections. So it goes from very small, humble beginnings to scaling up quite a bit. Now, this might seem a bit ridiculous for just one man against the elements, and that's where the multiplayer component comes into this. So it has a sort of, it's like, I don't want to call it asymmetric, don't necessarily have a term. Of all things, I might say Souls-like, but not in the usual way that we use that parlance. Think of Souls multiplayer, how, I'm not talking about invasions or anything like that, but how you can see other people's blood stains, you can write little messages for people to help them along. There is a collaborative, cooperative, like messaging system underpinning the social aspect of a Souls game, right? Not everyone really talks about it, but maybe you didn't know about that, right? This is doing something sort of obtuse in the multiplayer cooperative space, in that you can actually do the same thing. You can place little signs, and there's an economy of thumbs up likes in this. In fact, there's a whole backstory about, and it's kind of prescient being, you know, sort of a pre-COVID game. At least from a development perspective, they couldn't have seen that coming. The idea that after this post-apocalypse, everyone's sort of disparate and hiding in bunkers and they don't have human contact, human touch, and there's a big focus on delivering oxy to people to get them to bloody not be depressed, and as they come out and start sort of delivering themselves, they're weaning off of it because they're getting human contact, human interaction, and that's why this like system's in it. Is it a bit far-fetched and obtuse? Sure, right? But at least it's interesting and unusual and kind of positive as an undertone, but I don't want to get away from it. Essentially, you get thumbs up and likes. As you sort of move through the world, one of the main objectives is to sort of connect the different regions together on, Starlink, on the super internet set in this game. Again, there's a whole lot of wild sci-fi stuff. I haven't even gotten into the life and death component, but it's really fascinating and out there and interesting. But essentially, as a side effect of this weird melding of death and life realms, you get super fast internet. And you're connecting all these dudes together. You're the only one that can do it. Let's not get bogged down on that. So when you're off a region's net, you don't see other players anythings, any of their messages or anything. And it's up to you to sort of navigate it, kind of like a first go around in something like a Super Mario Maker. You can't just put your nightmare fuel creation out there on the market untested. You got to pass it first. So the same sort of thing happens here. So you have to go and you have to connect them under your own steam. But once they're connected on the net, you're going to start seeing everyone's messages. You can leave messages for other people as well. And the infrastructure starts to sort of swap over as well. I don't know what really governs it, but if you put down a ladder that's particularly helpful in a helpful spot, it's going to show up in other people's games, and they're probably going to put little likes and thumbs up on it because it was helpful. And this ties into the larger infrastructure, like a bridge, for example, I was talking about. That requires more resources to be put into it to build it up, like metals and resin and this sort of stuff, and it's kind of more than a one-man project, so that's exactly it. It will start showing up in other people's instances, half complete, and they can contribute materials themselves. And so all these different people will chip away together on this one bridge maybe you placed, and eventually it will be finished, and it can be used by all these different people. It's so clever and inspired, And it very much makes you feel like you're part of something, part of a community as it were, without it explicitly being, like 4-player Deep Rock or something like that. It's still a single-player game, but you have these collaborative experiences and projects that really make it wonderful. And look, I'm kind of running out of time because I don't want to turn this into a huge thing, but the things I covered there are mostly sort of grounded mechanics, getting over terrain. The same would go for water. You have different depth and all that, and if you go too deep in the water, you'll fall over and drift downstream and drop your packages and lose all your bits and pieces. Make your baby cry. And that sort of dovetails well into the kind of weird shit that's going on in this game as well, right? One of them is that you have this thing called a bridge baby. It's kind of a black box technology because you are in this post-apocalypse. So it's a baby that can help detect these monsters that are invisible called BTs. So the baby attaches onto you, and the game is very insistent that it's just a tool, it's broken, it's not working properly, throw it in the bin. And your character is like kind of you. He's the window through which the player acts, the Norman Reedus character. And he's a bit more Gordon Freeman, right? Very low voice lines, very much, well, the window that you see through. And he's like, nah, no one's touching my baby. And you get very paternal very quickly. It's very clever. It's clever in the same way that The Last of Us tapped the paternal instinct for everybody with the father-daughter relationship, but I digress. So you're looking after your baby, you don't want to make it cry or get upset. You can rock-a-bye it and all that, and God, this sounds so dumb saying it out loud, but play it. Play it for 18 hours like I did, and you will be invested. You will move fucking mountains to protect your stupid little bloody metal detector baby. And then, speaking of the invisible monster things, they're somehow tied to the Death Valley or whatever, and you sort of stealth around them and hold your breath, and they rock up only in this rain called timefall, and if the rain touches you, it will essentially speed up the aging of what it touches. That's why you have this beautiful volcanic landscapes all across the game. And if you stop and watch, you can see sort of flowers sprout and grow. It's very clever. But essentially everything this rain touches gets hyper accelerated in time. So you need timefall resistant gear, and it melts your packages actually, and you sort of have to use sprays to protect them. And if you get detected by these monsters, they'll kind of drag you off. I don't know if I even want to really give that away. But you'll end up in a sort of tar dimension boss fight, and how do you fight invisible death monsters? And it's so cool. The game lays it out in like one of the starting cutscenes, right, with a very, like, it will stick in your mind forever once you see it, of a dude knowing he's done, he's caught, the bad guys are going to kill him, and so he sort of taps out and shoots himself in the head. And all that does is flip him upside down and drags him off into the sky, still very much alive, but in some other weird state, trying to stab himself in the tummy with a knife to, I don't know, get out of the deal he's accidentally made. And then on top of that, if people die in this universe, after 48 hours, they go necro and they go and turn into a nuclear-style explosion. So that creates yet another problem. You have conflicts with terrorists in this game, and mules, who are people that are addicted to bloody delivering. So there's some pretty thinly veiled storytelling going on there, but they're an antagonistic force that pretty much just wants to steal your packages and have a whole system built around it. But you don't want to kill these blokes, because if you kill them, they're going to explode and kill everyone else as well. So there's just a real lot of interesting stuff here, and that's why I like it. Pretentious, maybe, sure, but not performative, right? It's not trying to push a message in some, I'm going to destroy my own work product, a la the way the West does pretentious messaging. It's more that it's just out there, bizarre, unusual stuff. Maybe some of it doesn't hit, but it all hits for me. And it makes for an outrageous experience of a game. I think it's a must play. You should play it. Put it on your wish list, get it cheap, whatever, because the sequel is rumoured, I believe, to come out this year. I don't know if it's got a hard date, but you better believe I'll be covering that. Anyway, look, that's my overview of my time so far with the game. I'm in love with it. I'm really enjoying it. I barely touched on where the narrative's going, but I mean, it wouldn't be much help to you anyway, other than to know it's a wild ride. It's an investment. The music, the graphics, everything is just beautiful and really well done, and I highly suggest checking it out. And that's why, even though this is the first to go on Scarlett's top 100 list, or whatever you want to call it, it probably is going to sit at the top slot for a while, if we're being honest. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.